Part two, gonna continue our conversation around target-driven planning, picking up where we left off last time. Okay, we spoke about why we plan and some of the key principles behind effective planning. This time, we're gonna dive a little deeper into the planning process and go over our 4-step process. We use 4 steps. There might be more, but we think these are kind of the non-negotiable steps to the planning process. Okay, so I'm gonna jump right in with step 1 over here. All right, is going to be to set targets. Basically, we want to think of this as, what do we want? So this is where we always start our planning process. Okay, and I kind of think of it, what do we want? What do we want to accomplish? What are our goals? All right, so we're setting targets. And I kind of think of it like you wouldn't get in your car to go somewhere without knowing the destination. So before you do anything else, you have to know what you want. Okay, step 2 is going to be our scheme. We like to think of this as, how are we going to get it? How we get it. All right, so we've determined what we want. The scheme is our plan, basically, of how we get what we want. And this is kind of, if you close your eyes and picture a plan in your head, the scheme is probably going to be the biggest part that's going to make up that plan. All right, so we've gone over what do we want, how do we get it. Step 3 in the planning process is going to be probably the simplest one, at least in theory, and it's going to be to implement our plan. So think of this of do the work. Should be the simplest part of it is to implement your plan, but as we know, kind of as you go through a plan, time goes on, whether it's you're moving through practice or moving through the week or the month, it can be easier than you think to drift away from actually implementing your pre-thought out plan. Okay, so always want to make sure we're actually implementing what we are planning. And step 4, possibly the most important part, is going to be to debrief. All right? And we think of this as, is it working? All right, so after you implement a plan, whether it's a short-term plan, so on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, yearly, whatever it is, you're going to be asking yourself, is it working? Okay? Are we implementing the plan? All right, are we sticking to the plan? Is our scheme allowing us to hit our targets? All right, so this is just a process of constant self-evaluation. All right, so always looking back on implementation, your scheme, your targets. Is everything working together? And are you getting closer to hitting your goals? Okay, so initially, the planning process is going to work this way. All right, from start to finish. Okay, starting with setting targets, ending with a debrief. But a good debrief also helps work backwards. All right, so a good debrief is going to influence, okay, all of these things as well. So maybe instead of looking at it linearly, all right, so we start here and we end here, all right, and it just always flows this way, maybe think of it as more of a cyclical pattern. Okay, so it moves in a circle. All right, so we might have targets, step 1, you might have scheme, step 2, step 3 is implement, step 4, debrief. Instead of always going this way, it actually works more in a circle. Okay, so looking at this, okay, the planning process, the end of each planning cycle, if you will, is going to be the debrief, but then that debrief is also the beginning of the next planning cycle. Okay, so it's constantly looking back on how you can improve, all right, those next steps. So those are the 4 steps that we use. That's the planning process. Next time we're going to dive deeper into these 4 sections to really understand how we can best use each section of the planning process.